Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. He excused himself to go to the bathroom and left through the fire escape. Absolutely brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Waiters of Reddit. What's the worst first date you've ever seen? Number 1. Olive Garden, around 2014 or so, from like 7:30, close on a weeknight. Middle-aged man of sub-average attractiveness was sitting alone at a table with a glass of water, insisting that his date would be just a few minutes, there's traffic. At around 9:15, the manager had to come out and let him know that the restaurant would close at 10, and if he'd like to place a food order, he should probably do it now. He ordered a bruschetta appetizer, and said again that his date was on her way and they'd order when she got there. 9:45, this beautiful woman walks in and awkwardly stands by his table. I couldn't hear the conversation they had, but the man that asked for a box for the appetizer, they wound up living together without her even sitting down. Number 2. I work in an Italian restaurant. A few years ago I waited on a guy and girl who met for the first time upon arriving at the restaurant. There were awkward pleasantries exchanged at the door and then they were seated. When I was taking their order, the guy asked if we had soup because he had mouth surgery a few days prior and chewing food was still a little rough. We don't have soup, so I explained that the softest food on the menu was gnocchi. He ordered the house gnocchi and proceeded to cut each tiny dumpling into 4 or more pieces and slowly chew each piece. He ate that entire dish over a 3-hour period and the girl stuck it out for the whole thing. She looked miserable and I'm pretty sure they never saw each other again. Number 3. More a story of a non-date. I worked at a cafe and it was a small local chain, so there were 2 other locations in the city. This guy sits down for about an hour and comes up to the counter and asks if we can call around to the other locations to see if this girl was there, because they had a date planned and he was sure she must have just gone to the wrong location. We called to the other 2 locations and they said they never saw anyone fitting that description. The guy stuck around for another couple hours, buying 2 more drinks and a sandwich, just waiting until we finally closed for the night. I felt so awful for him. He seemed so crushed. Number 4. Oh. He made a comment to her about how he's not Jew, so she should order whatever she wanted. She was Jewish. Spent the rest of the evening in silence as he went on about how his ex-girlfriend was anorexic and so annoying about food. He was happy to be on a date with a woman who could eat like a normal person. So weird. One of the only times she spoke was to respond that she was Jewish. It was a quiet night in my restaurant and I was nearby doing side work. She seemed like a very shy person. Number 5. Served a couple a few months ago. Every time I walked over, he would always be the one talking, and she would just be sitting there not having a good time. At the end I asked if it was one bill or separate, and she immediately piped up separate. I go and take his payment, and as I hand over the debit machine to the girl, I see the guy take his phone out and start swiping through Tinder. Number 6. Late to the party here, but I was bartending in NY and watched this couple that had met on Tinder have their first date sitting at my bar. The girl was a complete maniac. Kept bringing up the fact that the dude she was with could be a psychopath and could murder her. He had given no indication of this, and went on Tinder while he was still sitting beside her at the bar. Kept telling him he was lucky that she agreed to meet him at all and she didn't think he'd be this boring. She ordered about 5 or 6 lits and several shots. He literally just had 2 beers. She made him pay for everything. My favorite part of this shit show was that he excused himself to go to the bathroom and left through the fire escape. Absolutely brilliant. To be clear, there was only one official entrance and exit. This dude escaped out the back and she went searching for him. Straight up thought he had disappeared out of the bar. Number 7. Dude would not stop eating her effing food. Other table actually noticed and we casually people watched the date together. Girl looked miserable. Asked if she wanted the rest of her food boxed up and she said no, but the guy was like, actually yes. It was painful. Number 8. I used to work at a very small neighborhood restaurant. Everyone that came in was a regular. Most were couples in their 40s, 50s out for a quiet dinner, but there was one standout. A very handsome man in his early 30s would come in, it seems, only to break up with women. About twice a month he would come in with a beautiful woman and part way through their meal she would be crying. I always tried to clean the tables near them for as long as possible, but I never heard much of his speech. He always tipped well and was super nice to me and my coworkers. It was just brutal seeing him bring in a new lady and knowing what she was about to go through. Number 9. I was working in a small restaurant with 2 floors. A woman and a man came in and I had a table for them upstairs. It looked like they had a first date because they were asking those getting to know each other questions. After ordering food, the woman had to go to the toilet, which is downstairs. As she walked to the stairs, the food arrived. She walked down, tripped and fell all the way down, knocking her head on the ground. 2 colleagues immediately rushed over to her to see how she was doing. She was unconscious and bleeding from her head, so they called an ambulance. I went to the man while he already started eating and told him his partner didn't know how to call her, fell down the stairs, and that she was unconscious and that an ambulance was on the way. He walked to the stairs, looked down and walked back to his table to finish his food. Later the ambulance arrived, and I asked him if he wanted to go with them to the hospital, and he said no while finishing her food as well. It was so awkward, he just sat there for another 45 minutes eating, drinking, paid the bill and left. I still don't know what kind of relationship they had and whether the woman is okay. Number 10. When I was a waitress, my favorite couple was an escort and her regular John. He looked like George Costanza, short, fat, bald, no style, super shy though, and couldn't make eye contact with me. She was a breathing Barbie doll, sweet as pie, super charming, and she tipped really well and signed her name with little hearts. After a few years of them coming every few months, I noticed that this dude looks different, better somehow, stronger, better posture, less flabby looking. So I asked him, "Hey man, you're looking really good, did you change something?" He is too shy to really answer and mumbles something about losing some weight. I'm like, "No, you're carrying yourself differently, your whole presence is different." So Barbie escort presses him with a cheerful "Go on, tell her." And he confesses that he's taken up weightlifting and cycling recently and was thinking about doing a triathlon. I like to think she was an escort life coach. Number 11. I work at a country club that is up to its ears in old money that uses said old money to make more new money. The membership fees cost more than a year at my university. To say money is not an issue there would be an understatement. Anyways, I was serving a young couple and the power imbalance was phenomenal. She was the daughter of one of the board members and the entire staff knew her, Reed, her father's club account was major money. And the gent, well, he wasn't a member and certainly looked like he was just the average broke college student. He was wearing plain but nice clothes and she was dressed to the nines in fashion. The date seemed to go smoothly enough, nothing out of the ordinary. Until she gets up and leaves the table before I have brought out the bill. I bring the bill to the counter, knowing it is well over $300 worth of food and drinks, all things she insisted on ordering 2 bottles of top shelf wine, neither finished 2 steaks, when he asked for the chicken and she insisted on him eating steak like a man, and he solemnly goes to pull out his wallet and starts tearing up apologizing that he won't be able to tip. I mean, I've never had a customer cry over not being able to tip. And he further explained he was a server too and that she didn't know he wasn't rich and she left because he had told her about his scholarship. I was flabbergasted. And kindly reminded him that at this country club we do not take credit cards nor cash, we only charge 2 accounts. And so her father got a hefty bill, rest assured he signed a handsome tip to me in her name. Club policy is that the registered guests may sign for their host member, given that the members have invited them. It was entirely satisfying. Last I heard her father cut her off. I can't help but smile at all the life lessons she is learning, like working to go on dates. Number 12. Worked at Applebee's. This woman was the worst woman I've ever waited on. She was needy and slurped down her iced tea like there was a worldwide shortage. He was silent. He didn't talk once except to order his quesadilla burger, and she just kept going and going, prattling on. And she was mean too. Talking down about how people were losers to be servers, and how much better it was to work in a shop. At the end, he went to the bathroom and just never came back. He apparently jetted out the side door where the Togo girls worked and gave them a 20 to give to me. Worst woman was just sitting there and waiting for him to come back. I stood there at the server's station just waiting for her to realize he wasn't coming back. So after 10 minutes, she just started crying, pushed her chair over, and flounced out. I didn't get a tip, but it made my night. Number 13. This is actually a story where the somewhat awkward guy was doing pretty good until my boss F-ed it up for him. So there was this couple on a first date, seated at a table in the back. At first I didn't think much of it, wasn't even aware that it was a first date until the restaurant's phone rang. A man called to let me know his son was there on his very first date ever. The son was in his late 20s. Obviously this was a big deal to him and he called the restaurant to make sure we would do our best to make sure they had a pleasant evening. My boss heard and instantly went to the kitchen in order to make sure they would get a special treatment. What followed was plates with rose petals, red hearts, etc., way over the top. When serving the plates my boss even mentioned the phone call. To finish it off, the desert came complete with fireworks and all that. The idea was sweet, but obviously this was way too much for a first date of two people who were basically just getting to know each other. As the evening progressed, the girl was visually put off by my boss trying too hard. Poor guy. Up until then he had been doing quite well. The pair seemed to have a lovely evening. Until my try-hard boss entered the scene, that is. The girl was polite towards the end of their date, but it was obvious there was not going to be a second date. And it wasn't even the guy's fault, other people ruined it for him. I felt so sorry for that dude. Number 14. I once had a guy come sit at my bar who was waiting for his blind date. He orders a couple of drinks to calm his nerves. Well, he probably should have slowed it down to keep his mouth from working faster than his brain. Anywho. She shows up and is way out of his league. She is absolutely beautiful. She orders a drink and they start talking. I come back to check on them and I hear him talking about how much he hates children. He was saying things like how he hopes he never has any, and that he will never be stuck taking care of them, and how he wishes that kids couldn't be taken into public places so that he wouldn't have to be around them. She looked him dead in the eye and said, "Well, I have a daughter, and I love her very much." She grabbed her purse and walked out on him. The look on his face was absolutely priceless. Number 15. I work at a fairly nice Italian restaurant, where we do a lot of business. One night a man who I was not even serving came up to me while I was punching an order in on the computer and handed me $20 and a napkin with a phone number on it. He proceeds to tell me I am on the worst date of my life, this woman is horrendous and I have to get out of here. Take this $20 and please go to the nearest phone and call me and tell me that I have to get home right away. I don't care what excuse you make up, I just gotta get the hell out of here. Initially I thought he was kidding until 2 minutes later the guy who was serving him came up to me to tell me how wicked this woman was and how he could tell the guy didn't want to be there. I promptly called that guy as soon as I had a free minute. I called him and told him I broke down on the side of the road and needed a lift. I never talked to the wicked woman. Consensus from the server in charge of her table was she was just overly rude and off-putting. One of my shining achievements as a server. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.